here I'm just going to go through my daily process for the coins. So we saw that we had a little bit of buying through the centre or at the start of the New York Stock Exchange hours, and then we've had a series of reactionary buys and closes as sells as we've traded into the close and into the overnight. Now, if I'm just going to pull up here the futures collation, so this shows us what was happening in all of the futures. So let's just put it into 15 minutes. I'd prefer to collate them. And we can see that they have grained up a bit in today, but they're really still quite red, even though they've grained up a little bit. They're red from this little bit here. Yes, it is greener than we've seen, but is it going to be ongoing? I don't know. I don't think anything looks like it's ready to buy yet. So I'm just going to download that image. I'm going to go onto BTC USD. It's crypto, and I'm going to chuck that one in as the first one. And let's just see if there's been any buying. So we have a couple of here of collations of our ETFs and so on. And look, even though there's been a bit of a drop, the DPI is pretty solid compared to periods before. It's higher. Positioning's poor. We've had a lot of delta come off there, and it's been replaced with some heavy hedging. If we let's just see what it looks like in the back. Let's see what it looks like in the shorter dated. So in the shorter dated, look, there's been some buying of that dip, but it's really got squashed today. But there's definitely some dip buying this week after a big gamma off. What does that look like the weeks before? You can see this gamma coming off. So that's sort of gone from quite low to really quite high, and the hedging's holding. Although it is growing up this week, there are people trying to buy it, but I think that's fairly. We need to see a lot more of this come off. So I'm just going to chuck that in. I think it's self-explanatory. So in the indexes, I think that we can see that there's nothing really to show. I suppose we can probably say it's gone to amber because we have seen a little bit better buying, or a little bit of buying, but we saw some buying during the day. Let's just have a look what the time lag said in the mixed. That's the wrong one. Time lag. Time lag in personal limited. And I just want to show it in limited again. I do apologise. Indicators, favourites, limited, profiles, multi-layer, time lag. So it's an interesting one. It shows that there was some quite good buying, but then there was yesterday, So I think that if we looked at this showed us that we were having this solid sell, which turned into just continued through. But we have had a little bit of buying in that down in here, so we can throw that on as an extra. So pour my hedged. I'm just going to throw that extra image in there. Oh, is it the next one? I think it is. And then let's go and have a look at what we've got in coining and the other. I was a little bit tempted to take my hedges off today, off coin, but I wanted to see. It looks like a fairly rough drop here. And we can see that the long dated hedging is sticking. The short dated, we've had a little bit removed, and we've had a lot of buying today. I would think it's buying. We also had a lot of hedging. It's sort of multi-layered here, what's been happening. There was some good buying into the close. So good buying into the close. I don't know whether it's actually going to improve the position much. This is still showing it's. This, I mean, this might have been bought. Oh yeah, then you'd expect that to be closed. I should quickly finish off this coin. Or had I just started it? Coin. It's red. I'm going to move it to amber. Some closing. Just going through the VIX here, having a look at it. First thing I notice is that we've had a large closing, or a reasonably large closing of all VIX, but especially in the money. Out of the money, pretty. I suppose they're about 0.3 delta through to about 0.8 delta. We have seen a large closing of VIX across. It's probably because they've been sold calls, and these have been bought puts. So there's quite a feeling of a change in the VIX. And then if I go and look at the VIX itself, I can see here that we've only had spiky tops. Spiky tops rather than flat tops. Flat tops, let's see if we can see some flat tops. Here's some flat tops. Flat tops tend to be, these longer periods, they tend to be negative, so they're quite bearish, but these have been just spiky tops going through, a little bit flat there through the center, and we've dropped into quite green, and we can just see this is spiky along here. There's a flat in there. These are spikes. I'm just having a look at. I'm just having a look here at the amalgamated futures. So this is all the VIX amalgamated futures, and again, that's really quite strong. So I was just going to chuck that in on my daily, and closing puts bearish continued. It's just green, so I'm just going to chuck that in as green, and then I'm going to get on with the crypto. This is BTC. We're just having a look at the hedging. Sorry, this is grey scales. The hedging is still reasonably strong. None of it's come off. It's not really strong, but it's only a small traded stock. So I'm just going to take an image of that just to show that where it's at. the there's a little bit more, was a little bit more definitely reactionary, this drop into this tighter stuff, where yesterday we had selling most of the afternoon. So I don't know whether that's green, it's probably just amber. So I don't think the BTC changed at all from yesterday. I'll just go into the previous day. So we'll just look BTC in here, so it's GBTC. Yesterday was, I think it was had a bad day yesterday. Yeah, it was quite red. I think pretty much it's going to be sitting there the same. So the couple of things we can see is it's really brown. So this one bit of strong buying here is just reactionary buying. Reaction or reactive buying and flat. So I'm just going to drop that one down, and that's going to give us a bad day, I would have thought, on BTC, GBT. The one thing that I try and do in all of my work is I try and have no confirmation bias. So this is a much nicer buy here than we just saw in yesterday. I mean, the one thing to note in going into the close yesterday was that it started to rise up. We didn't see that today. The day before we had buying into the close. Yesterday we had selling up into the close to a certain degree, and then today we've had this reactive liquidity, and then we've had the second little bit here. Maybe it's reactive, maybe some of it's reactive. I think there's a bit of buying into the close, which is interesting. Let's just have a look and see what we see in the back of IBIT. IBIT's because of being CME. Was it CBOE? Maybe it's CBOE. Maybe I'm telling a fib. IBIT. It's NASDAQ. Security info. Doesn't say who runs it on the exchange. Yes, it's a CBOE. So it's had. Oh, I've got too many letters in that. It's had a better day, but it's the hedging sticking, which is the bad point on all of these, is that we're not seeing a reduction in the hedging. We saw DPI drop. It's very low DPI, 24. That's just people getting out, and you can just see how heavy it is. So IBIT is really continued. If anything, it's deteriorated a bit. So I'm just going to put that in here, and then we'll move on to BITO. I'm going to leave IBIT as. I'm just going to drop in these couple of details. I'm going to leave it as amber, because it's just not, there's that buying into the close suggests that we might get a bump up today, but I'm going to leave it as amber rather than red. So better afternoon buying, very low DPI, which is just really poor. Very low DPI. It's just a risk-off market. No one's getting new positions in it, so it's like a time to leave the market, I think. These both have ended up in the wrong place. All right, I'm going to go and do BITO. So I'm just looking at BITO here. BITO is very negative. It's got very heavy hedging. In close, there's some people who've been doing some shorting, and then they've closed their positions. Not a lot of them, but quite a few. All right, BITO. Just very low. Oh no, I think that I discussed it. Had a selling day. We've got very negative long-dated hedging that hasn't bought a bottom, so it sold the top. All right. Just going to move on and have a look at muster. I think muster and Mustex have really been telling us the whole way along what's been happening in these markets. I think that there's nothing stronger than what we've seen in their sell-off. I mean, look, this is dropping right down. It's just reactionary. We did see try to have a build through the centre of here. Then we've seen this terrible hedge off period in muster. This hedging has just been in the wrong spot. The hedging's just been so strong, and this is just selling. And then what we've seen today is just reactionary. So when you have a big price drop and you drop into the next area, the next POC, we can just see you hit a POC. So here's the POC, here's the high volume node, and it greens up. But really, the green has gone. If we go out to the 2 hour, we'll just see that we're really up into a high. This greening out has disappeared, and we're into this red section. If we look at muster, just quickly in the its DPI has picked up a little bit, but it's just gone through this period of 35 to 40. It's very, very low. And we can see here that when we got out to the 19th, which is just here, we've just topped out. So I'm just going to screenshot that, and we can just see we just lost all of this incredibly strong positioning that thought that it was going to be going long here. We had mixed buying over that period, and then it's just vanished. What is the underlying reasons for it? Look, I'm not into macroeconomics as such. I understand macroeconomics, but it is a different game to understanding the stock market and the plumbing of the stock market. The plumbing of the stock market is not about what happens in macroeconomics. The plumbing is about the leverage and the hedging that is required in the market. That is what sends direction. The market has underlying bids that are coming from investment funds, from superannuation, or from retirement accounts, and all of those things give an underlying bid. So you've always got an increasing market that's always going up in value. But here, it isn't fundamentals. It isn't macroeconomics. Maybe they change at different times, but there's an underlying bid, and that, depending on how that leverage is worked, when the hedging's been taken, whether it's the summertime hedging or whether it's the Christmas hedging, all of those things just affect how the market's going to operate, and it's got nothing really to do with the news on the day. That might might make things fluctuate during the day, but it doesn't make it fluctuate on the bigger period, the bigger time period. Let me just get back and I'll just finish this. I'll just type this in here. So we've had, we've got reduction in the money. Oh, somehow that moved over there. I think this here is a bigger market maker, this increase in DPI, buying from a smaller market maker. We tend to see that when we get a big risk off. We'll see Citadel or someone like that step in for a smaller market maker. The bigger market makers, they still have to report to FINRA, which is run by the SEC, so they still have to report at the end of the day their sales. It's not some imaginary thing that we make up. This is built by the Securities Exchange details. So I'm just going to drop in the, I think I'm happy with that. Did I do muster in here? No, I haven't done muster in here, so I'm just going to go down to 15 minutes and just... So I think that this is reactionary. It might have been a little bit of buying, but a lot of people expect a bump, so they trade the retrace or buy the dip. So I think that if I look on a lower period, let's see if it got shadow. It's quite good. It's a little bit more buying at the Bitcoin's just started to take off. All right, let's just take an image of that, and then we'll just move on and we'll have a look at the miners. So we're down to the miners, and here we can see some very reactive, but mind you, we have very strong buy into the close in the 5 minute. What that really means, I don't know. But it was a strong close. It was probably worth buying. Oh, let's just close that out. So it's bounced back into this very, this is an incredibly strong area here that's just been held for so long, and that is why we've got this incredibly strong reaction of the buy, because we're in that 16 POC and that high volume node. Let's have a look what the buying action says. I know some people bought the bottom again. Look at that, that just looks terrible. Maybe people are just picking up the high IV and are selling puts in the bottom. It's interesting that it's strong all across the board. Let's see if we've got a high DPI. Yeah, look, there's no, it's not a high DPI, but there's a strong DPI there, so it might be. We can see this risk off here happened on the 22nd, so it happened there, and then we've just plummeted since, and we haven't really seen, definitely haven't seen a reduction in that. It's an interesting chart, isn't it? If we go out to an hour, what does it tell us? Does it tell us that it tells us it's not really over yet? Even though we've had this flat high period since the 22nd, it does tell us that we're back into this green zone, as it often does when we hit these bottoms. So we can see this bottom here went really green and then just flattened out for a while. But this time, yeah, we're still down in that green, maybe just somewhere here. All right, I'm just going to publish that, and then we'll do Riot and Wolf. So just having a look here, I'm just going to do BMNR first. It looks terrible, but it is definitely greener than we've seen a lot of the other stocks. So there's people holding it. We'll have a look at all of the ethers in a minute. Yeah, there's a lot of hedging, but a lot's come off. It's fallen into this hedging here, but in doing that, it's held. It's held, and there's a lot of opening of out of the money calls. And I would say that if we have a look at the IV, which has had a very big day, we can just see that market makers have really been screwing the price down on this. Yesterday and the day before, they screwed the price down on puts. Today they've dropped it, so there's no money in cashing in today. The cash in was yesterday, even though the biggest drop is today, and then they've really stopped people or dissuaded people. Tomorrow will be the day to buy it, unless it jumps too high. So I'm just having a look at it here. A lot of this is down in a very low level before. I would think it's become, that's not reactionary, I don't think. That's reactionary. This drop off here is reactionary. This is just shaking out. I would say it's an overreaction, shaking a lot of the players out. And I would have thought that even in the end of the day, we saw more buying. So, if I looked at this, the first thing I'd say is I think that that's been pretty solid buying for most of that period there. There's one little bit off there, but that's the buying. So I would say that's pretty green. So that's worth noting, even though it's pretty much in the close. It's strong. On the back of some pretty strong stuff yesterday up before this quite big jump. So I think that that's quite strong. And the other thing to note is if we go to an hour, it's right solidly on the 618. That's why that people are buying it, I suppose. It's that typical response to the fibs. Is it a big buy? No, but look, this bottom here isn't really a big buy either. It had these buys going through that just didn't stop on the way. They just haven't stopped. This stock has just been absolutely flogged. It's just ready to explode. Don't know why. Don't know anything about it. But you can just see that it's built, and it's ready to take off, is my guess. And this is the first. We had a little bit of a drop here. We've had a couple of drops through here, but again, we've had a large accumulation. Not that we can see much of the accumulation because we've had this very short period of optionality or options and shortable. So we're only talking a couple of months of data. Anyway, that's my ideas about BMNR. All right, I'm going to get down and just do Wolf now. The last of my... Maybe I need to do BT or BTAF. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? And then on the last, into the close. What did it look like for the day? Looks okay. I would have liked it to drop down into this box, but anyway. It really likes that. Really likes this high volume node. All right, there's Wolf. So Wolf had a selling day, but it's not a hard one. It's not, it's not a big red one like that. But they're hard to judge. But it finished down with a little bit of buying. There's still a bit of buying to the close. It had some buying yesterday. It's generally been buying across this whole. If we look at this as a section, the thing that we can say is these are all reactionary. These are long and flat. These are reactionary. So we'll just I'm going to bang that in. Reactionary selling, no flat tops, and this has got. That's up here, and then here we've got really nice solid buying section, and we'll just see where that goes. Oh. And really it's on the back of some strong stuff, but it's none of these sort of flats that take long flat bottoms. This just looks like backfilling. The interesting thing in today was we've had an increase in the money puts and calls, and I would say that that's because the IV was really good across all. So it's probably better. 596. Yeah, look at that, pretty similar. Terra Wolf had buying today, so it's got high DPI. So I mean, it's good looking today. So I'm going to put in Wolf. Crypto. Did I save any of those? No, I haven't yet. I'm just going to save that. I think that, look, maybe I'm going a bit early, but it's always, as long as you hedge, it's no harm going early. I went early on coin, and I haven't yet. If I get out tomorrow and into it, I'll be happy. If I get out as in I get out of my hedges tomorrow. So Wolf was, how nasty was it being to us? Oh, I didn't have Wolf in yesterday. I reckon it was probably just sideways with the buying, so it would have been an amber. And I reckon it's probably amber to greenish today. Strong calls and puts opened. So I just think that's put selling and call buying. No flat tops. Selling just spikes. Each is reactionary. When I say reactionary, I mean it's just the natural reaction. If you have a whole lot of buying and you stop buying, it's gonna quickly throw back, and you'll get a little bit of selling. So you get that because of the shape of the data, not necessarily because there's selling. It's just the way that if data's going really hard one way and then you let go of it, it'll be like a balloon. It'll jump back, but it doesn't stay up there. It doesn't sort of float around in that selling place. It just it sits there. So I reckon that this is almost. I might even put that as a. I'm tempted to put it as a green. I'm not certain. Anyway, I'm going to highlight it because I think it's worth highlighting. I'm going to create it, and then that is the end of my crypto. I hope you've enjoyed it. Cheers.